Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this edition of Grassroots Racing Show, brought to you by these fine sponsors. The Kansas Auto Racing Museum at Chapman, Kansas, because today's stars are tomorrow's legends. Grail Engine Technology, design that will change the world. Belleville Motorsports, providing safe, fast, and affordable race cars for national champions and feature winners all across America. Advanced Engine and Machine of Salina, a full-service racing shop providing complete engines, parts, and services for winners.
Welcome to the Grassroots Racing Show. I'm your host, Roger Thompson. Our roving reporter, Mike Kraft, has a terrific program scheduled for you folks. The program is going to be in two parts, but let me tell you about the first part. He has done interviews with Bob Trossel. Mike is at the Midwest Dirt Legends in Springfield, Missouri. The interviewer there is Kevin Prinsky of Midwest Dirt Legends, and he is interviewing renowned, unbelievable car builder Bob Trossel, who built cars back in the 70s, had incredible drivers racing for him, including Jeff Gordon. I've had the pleasure of driving one of his cars that was rebuilt by Bob McCall of New Cambria, and this car was fast right out of the box. A very interesting fellow. You'll enjoy that part of the show. Second part of the interview for the show is going to be with Shane Carson, who you will know as a World of Outlaw racer, a Hall of Fame racer, a good friend with Harold Leap, and his dad ran the Oklahoma City Speedway in Oklahoma City for many years. The second part of our show has some interviews with Ramo Stott, who you'll recall was an IMCA driver, Ferris Collier, who drove for many years out of the Missouri area, and Freddie Fryer. So we anticipate you'll enjoy these interviews and look forward to them. Thank you.
I'm Kevin Prinsky with Midwest Dirt Track Legends. This is our first meet and greet get-together at Springfield Raceway, Springfield, Missouri. First guest today is going to be renowned sprint car builder Bob Trossel. Bob, I want to welcome you here. Bob's from Des Moines. We're both from Des Moines. Bob, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now that you're in retirement.
Oh, I'm still doing a little work at home. I'm in the midst of building another sprint car right now for Bill Duesenberry. It'll be a vintage car. It's something he's asked about in the past. It's a car I'd built for 1978 for Shane Carson. We had real good luck with it. So Billy's been hounding me about one of them for the last 30 years. So we're gaining on it right now.
Good deal, good deal. Now, Bob, he's a car owner that has won the Knoxville Nationals with Steve Kinzer. Do you want to tell us a little story about that?
Oh, I had a driver named Gary Rush from Australia here, and we broke our last motor the qualifying night, so we were out. Steve, he got qualified, but he turned over in the heat race, and he was out, so we kind of got together, and because he didn't have an entry in, or the next night I did, but I didn't have a motor, so we got together and put one of their engines in my car, and we got high points on Thursday night, started on the front row of the main event, and was lucky enough to win it.
Great deal. Now, I'm guessing Knoxville is your favorite track?
Yeah, it'd have to be, because Doug Wolfgang also won the Nationals for me in 1977, so I'd have to say it's my best track and my favorite one. Made the most money at it, especially, and selling out. That was Doug's first national win and Steve's first national win when they drove my cars. So between them now, they had 17 wins. So I must have taught them something.
Now, I'm not going to ask you who your favorite driver is. Who would be probably your top 5 drivers?
Well, I'd have to put Doug at the top, Wolfgang, and then and second, I would like to be Steve Kinzer, but we only raced that one weekend, and I'd have to say Jan Opperman was my second favorite driver, and I hate to step on any of my drivers' toes because Shane Carson has to be in the top 5, Tim Green, and Dick Sutcliffe. I've had so many great drivers that it'd just be hard to really single any of them out. I'd rather do maybe a top 10 would probably fit better. Right.
Okay, well, tell the people out there how many cars you have built.
The chassis number on this one I'm working on right now will be 535.
535. Okay, now how many drivers have you had over the years?
Over 100.
Well, now, we were talking earlier, of course, your main thing was the sprint cars and a few midgets. Now, tell us about that late model you built for Bill Moyer.
Oh, I worked for Bill Moyer in 67, 8, and 9. Of course, probably most people know Billy Jr., his boy, that wins so many races. But anyway, Bill wanted to. He was always dreaming about building something different, and he come up with, when they started the weekly show in Des Moines, the rules were pretty lax. They didn't have a lot of special rules, so we figured out we could build a Corvette that had the motor already set back. It was a shorter wheelbase, and it could be a lot more competitive car. So we found a stripper in Chicago, and there wasn't much there, just a frame, and I built the roll cage, and it was kind of, everybody just said it was a big sprint car because it did have a Halibran open rear end in it, and mag wheels, and it was coiled over. There was a torsion bar front, and we had an in-out box in it too. And then when they really blew the stack when they found that out, they added a rule to the book that it had to have a reverse. So we had to put a transmission in it.
Was that Homer Milton that was a promoter at that time?
Homer Milton was a promoter, and Johnny Beaucamp was the flagman.
Right. Johnny Beaucamp, those are legends in themselves, I tell you, Johnny especially. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that, but whatever did happen with that car then? Did they end up selling it off or what?
The rules were set for 2 years. They couldn't make any changes. They had, other than like to put a transmission in it. But after the 2 years, Bill sold the car to a guy in Omaha. They stretched it out and put a Chevelle body on it so they could still run the car. Now I don't know what happened to it after that.
I'm Ken Tatro, and you're watching the Grassroots Racing Show on my favorite network.
Which one was your favorite car out of all the ones? I know you and Wolfie worked together on a design for one all the time, but over the years, what do you think was your most favorite car that you had?
Oh, geez, that'd be hard. I have to think about that a little bit. Of course, I built my second car that I built for myself. I was featured in Hot Rod magazine in 1966, the March issue, I think it was, and that was a pretty nice car. In fact, Billy Duesenberry's got a T-shirt on. It's got it on the back of it right now, right? Okay. That one he had on. Well, of course, the 77 car that Wolfie won the Nationals in, that's still restored it in the garage at the museum in Knoxville, as well as the Vice Grip car that Kinzer won, and it's there too. So, and my very first car is there, which I raced for 3 years. It was sold. It changed hands 4 or 5 times. I found it in 1989. I restored it, and we had it run it in some vintage races. I sold it to a guy in Phoenix. He sold it to a guy in Michigan that was starting a museum. Then Billy Duesenberry seen it at a Corvette show. It's the MBNA Bank spot had it in a trailer with Bobby Labonte's Interstate battery car and a John Force drag car. They were on a thing that traveled the circuit of the Corvette shows, and then it kind of disappeared. And here about a month or so ago, a bank in Delaware called the museum in Knoxville and said they had a sprint car they wanted to donate if they were interested. And Bob Baker said, well, what is it? Well, we just know it's a sprint car, and it's got a thing on the dash that says built by Bob Trossel, Des Moines, Iowa, 1961, restored by Bob Trossel and Craig Egan in 1989, and we want to give it to you. So Bob Baker called me and says, what car would that be? And I said, that's my first car, you better take that. So they said, well, we'll bring it out in a couple of weeks, and they brought it out just for the Nationals. And
Well, Bob, look, we appreciate you being down here in Springfield, down here in the beautiful Ozarks. You're a real legend. I appreciate you being here. Thanks, bud. This is Shane Carson from the Oklahoma City area. He's driven open wheel sprint cars. And Shane's driven a lot of different sprint cars over the years. Tell us probably about your top 5 cars are.
Well, you know, when I first got out of racing modifieds in Oklahoma, I was able to go up and race for Laverne Nance. Laverne Nance was a builder out of Wichita. Everybody knew him. You know, if you could go up and run for Nance and do some good, you would get a lot of exposure. Well, that's the way it worked out. We didn't run a lot, me and Laverne, but we ran a few races, and we won a race in Phoenix City, Alabama. Okay. And the way it worked out, that was in '77. And the way it worked out for me in 1978, Bob Trossel was looking for a driver. He remembered that race because I beat Wolfgang in that race.
That was his driver.
So yeah, that was his driver. And so Bob called me over the winter of '77, and I started in '78 with Bob and ran that full season. That was my first full-time ride. We won about 25 features. We won the championship for Knoxville season championship. And then we were Rookie of the Year and track champion with NSCA. NSCA was a little bit like IMCA back in those days. They ran a schedule, and they ran Sedalia, and they ran Kansas City and Knoxville, Illinois. They ran a lot of fair tracks, but it was a good series. Dave Van Patten and Robert Lawton ran it, and Bob and I pretty much supported it and ran most of those races. We ended up winning that championship. So, you know, Bob Trossel car would have to have been one that I was really lucky to get into at that time. Nobody knew who I was or where I was from, and when I got out there with Bob, you know, we won a lot of races and did some good, and that got me on people's mind. So the following year, I ended up starting the year driving for CK Spurlock, which is a Loretta Lynn car. Right. Then I went into the Speedway Motors car, and then I was back into the Trossel car. So, you know, me and Doug Wolfgang went back and forth for a few years and swapping rides and driving each other's cars, it seemed like. But, you know, but those were good days, and those days I'll always remember. My first full-time car that was based out of Oklahoma was our Tom Garrett Farm Sprinter. It was a number $12 car, and that would have been in '81. Right. And we ran that car for 3 full seasons. And at the end of '83, Tom Garrett decided to quit, so I had to look for another ride. Ended up with Richard Tharp with the Rio Airways 51. Almost won a couple of really big shows. We almost won the King's Royal, the very first one, and that was another one of my favorite cars. And then I went into the Champ Dirt cars back in Oklahoma. Really, that was the first time I'd gotten to run those cars. Mid-'80s, and I started driving for an owner named Pat Suki, and Pat was an owner for over the years probably 30.
A lot of great
and you know, and Pat was right at the point where I think he was about done. You know, he was going to quit, but his mechanic was David Grace, a good friend of mine, and he said, well, you know, we want to get Shane to drive. So I came back and drove it occasionally, and we had some really good times. And that car is the same car. The same owner that Gambler Chassis Company ended up giving us a 100-inch Champ Dirt car from the company and let us run that car, and we had really good success with that car.
Right.
So over the years, I mean, I've had some great rides, you know, and I feel like that's probably what you know. I always say the cars, most of it. So I'll just say the cars were great, and that's why I was able to win.
Right. That helps. It helps.
Yeah, that's right.
This is Scotty Anderson, and you're watching my favorite show, Grassroots Racing.
Okay, now I know you've been a promoter in the past. Are you doing any promoting at all now?
They did away with the Oklahoma City track, and my last Outlaw show there, I did them from 1980 till 2002. So for 22 years, I did the World of Outlaw shows at Oklahoma City. I had one in the spring, one in the summer, most years. So, you know, I had 30 or 40 shows that I put on at Oklahoma City over those years, and in 2002 it just got to where we couldn't do it anymore there, and now that racetrack's gone. Right. They leveled the grandstand and the track, and it's just out of there like it is in Tulsa. They don't have a racetrack either, you know. Oklahoma City and Tulsa, it's unusual that both tracks, as strong as they were in their day, I mean, they were the place to race back in those days.
In open wheel days.
Neither one has a track now, so.
Yeah, and that's terrible. It's terrible.
Very.
Well, I was just kind of wondering, because I was hoping somewhere down the line we could get another group get together over in the Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Wichita area, and get a lot of those guys together. But I was wanting to get your opinion on what what you think the state of affairs is in open wheel racing right now. I know Tulsa's out of business, Oklahoma City's gone, which I think is a shame, and a lot of I live in Northwest Arkansas. We've lost tracks there too, and I just kind of what your opinion is of the racing today. Is it just is it the government, politics running these tracks out of business? What do you think, being a former promoter?
Well, it's definitely, you're dealing with, rising costs in insurance. You're dealing with increased cost of advertising and everything to make that show go. You can't keep going up on ticket prices to try to offset that. A lot of tracks don't have the capacity for, to have a big enough crowd to pay for some of those shows, so you can't run them there anymore. Right. And that happens a lot. I mean, I've been all over the country this year watching different tracks that are struggling, and I've also seen some tracks that are coming back. Mm-hmm. I don't see that as much as we'd like, but I feel like that the big shows, I feel like it's been this way for a while. I feel like the big shows are doing fine. The Knoxville Nationals, the big shows at Eldora, those big shows will continue to do well. But I think the weekly programs are struggling, and I don't know exactly how to fix that. I feel like that you need to run a class of cars that you can afford to run and keep your expenses squared away where you can pay some decent purses to those cars. I mean, you may not be able to run a sprint car in there every week that has to have a $20,000 or $30,000 purse.
Maybe specials, something.
Maybe
like
specials only.
Right. Okay.
Yep, and you've seen that.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot of tracks that have gone to specials only formats.
Well, I was just kind of wondering, because I'm seeing a lot of tracks struggling over in our area too. And I don't know what the answer is either. I really don't. But I'm hoping with the debacle that they're having with NASCAR this past week, that would maybe shoot some more towards the short tracks. Now that dirt track race they had with the trucks at Eldora, that brought a lot of notoriety. But you and me both know the short tracks are pretty neat deals. And
you and I have grown up there. That's where I was a little kid selling programs. So I went through through that whole deal. Worked up to where I could to get in the pits then, and I was in a car, and then I was able to race successfully enough to stay in it as a career. So I can't imagine the kids today not having that option.
Time's up for now. This is Shane Carson, and thanks for everybody for watching.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
these things and play with them, they'd be a gas.
Oh, they are fun. We'll have to get you to Oskaloosa sometime.
Yeah, really.
Or Knoxville.
Yeah.
Shane, how long has it been since you've been in one?
Well, it's been a while. I mean, I've driven some other stuff, like, you know, for Smiley, I raced for him. It was a 305, so this has got a nice motor in it. We just never quite got it cleared out. But it's always fun to play and come out and play.
I was going to say, had to feel good, man.
Yeah.
Bring back a lot of memories.
Oh,
I
yeah.
suppose. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you don't get to run them without a wing too often anymore.
Yeah. Well, it was sure fun to watch,
Yeah,
man.
fun.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our last show, and we look forward to seeing you folks again at our next show. In the meantime, take care and drive safely.